Hey everybody, thanks for joining this webinar on networked testing. We're going to kick things off at this time. So if I could have the panelists start their video, just so we see them. Hello, Steve, Zach and Michelle. My name is Lindsay Schiller. I work on the marketing team here at Testlio, and I just want to handle the typical admin housekeeping things before we get going. First, so we're going to be a punctual 30 minutes for this webinar. We are going to stay around for 15 minutes afterwards to answer some questions. Feel free to drop questions anytime you want in the Q&A feature. It's a very nice feature that allows me to answer some questions if I can, or I will assemble the rest and pose them to the panelists at the end. So do stick around if you can't. If you need to jet, no problem. We'll be sending out a recording of the webinar afterwards, so feel free to drop if you need to. And lastly, I'm sure you're all very familiar with Zoom, but I just found a new feature that is pretty nifty, where you can toggle how you see the slides versus the panelists on your screen using a slider bar that's in the middle of the screen. So feel free to control and customize how you view the content today. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Steve Semmelsberger, Testlio's CEO.
Thank you, Lindsay. Hello, everybody. Greetings from Austin, Texas. We're here today to talk about a new concept. We call it networked testing, and we'll discuss applications for an increasingly remote and distributed existence that we're experiencing. I'm joined by two esteemed colleagues. Michelle has been in the quality space for more than 10 years and manages partnerships with some of our largest and most strategic clients. And Zach grew up in in-house quality in individual contributor and leadership roles in companies like Disney and CW, and we were excited for him to join Testlio a couple years ago. And he really oversees key elements of engagements in practice and delivery. So I've got the two experts with us today. And the flow of today's conversation will be first an introduction where I'll offer some concepts. Network testing is a new term. It's something that we've been using for a couple of months now, and yet it's gaining energy and momentum as we start to discuss it with more people. Zach and Michelle will take you through 3 case studies. We'll land with some takeaways and some actions that we hope can be applicable to all of you. So today's webinar is brought to you by Testlio. As Lindsay mentioned at the beginning, all of us are Testlio employees. Testlio is a managed app testing company. We work with emerging and large companies across different industries. We've been in operations for about 6.5 years and have gained a bunch of experience through more than 6.5 million tests that we've delivered for our clients. We have an expert network of about 10,000 testers, and we're starting to reach scale. Our clients collectively have over 1.6 billion users of their products. So a lot of people use the products that our team tests. So many of us have lived increasingly on Zoom and on conference call. But the data is really interesting when you peel apart what seems to be a massive multi-year trend around a shift to remote distributed work. So 44% growth in the last 5 years in the US of those who are working remotely. We're seeing that remote workers are 20% or more productive when they have less distractions. People tend to stay longer with the organizations that they work with. And coupled with this shift to remote and distributed work, first it was work from home, now I think it's work from anywhere. There are tons of people who are freelancing and gigging and finding ways to participate in work in increasingly flexible manners. And I think these trends are important as we start to think of quality broadly. So network testing, as we define it, is a mindset and it's an approach as well too. It's a set of best practices. And it uses expert testers who consistently work on initiatives. They burst into action so they can come in exactly when you need them, often at very large volumes over short periods of time, as Zach and Michelle will both talk about. They're distributed by nature. They work all over the place. They collaborate and work in collectives. And they're platform powered, so they use software in compelling ways to operate at scale. We see network testing as applicable to lots of different forms of software testing. So functional testing, regression testing, location-specific end-to-end testing in other forms. And we find it works really well for native applications, which are often used on mobile and OTT and other devices where code gets packaged and then released at critical points of distribution where you can't roll back, where the release matters greatly. And we'll talk about speed, how this can move very fast, measured in clock and calendar time, quality impact, so what are the results of the experience, and then economics. And in each case study, we'll present some rough math where we did comparisons between network testing and outsourced testing, and looked at what it might take to replicate the type of network testing work that's occurring through a more classic full capacity outsourced model. So there are many approaches to manual testing, and we will focus on manual versus automated testing for today's conversation. There's in-house, outsourced, and crowdsourced methods. And we offer that network testing has intentional overlap with many of these practices, as well as then some differences also too. And this chart isn't exact, so please forgive us if you disagree with some of the checks and X's, as there are different approaches here. But rounding off, I mentioned that network testing uses expert and consistent testers who burst into action, who work in lots of different locations. They're also thoughtfully compensated. So we hold that professionals who are well compensated do great work. They use real devices in lots of different messy configurations in the wild, and we find that these real hardware devices are powerful. Runs can be managed by lots of different people and different combinations. And then everything that happens with the network testing is traceable. So there's a transparent approach, so it's very easy to see what occurred in different stages. And you'll see in the footnote that there are 5 more attributes of network testing, and there's at least paragraph descriptions of all of these on testlio.com/network-testing. Okay, so with that, I'd like to turn over to Michelle and Zach to take us through our case studies.
Awesome. Thanks for the introduction, Steve. And hello, everyone who's on the call. Really happy to chat today. So essentially, where we wanted to start all of these case studies was with one of our top social network clients that we work with. And essentially, social networking, it's a big part of our lives. We use it. We use it every day, for better or for worse. And its exposure is global. It's within cultures, it's within languages, it's within countries. It's all around you. And one of our social network clients wanted to explore that a little bit more. So when they brought it to us, they said, we want to see what this looks like in our 45 supported languages. What does this experience look like? Not just from a functional perspective, not just from is the grammar correct, but culturally and linguistically, does this make sense? We, of course, jumped in and said, sure, let's tackle this together. And what we did was we started a huge recruitment campaign. And we went through and vetted over 6,000 testers. That's a lot. That's a lot for me, for a lot of people that were involved, but it was a great experience and a great immersion because we only accepted 2.5% of this, leaving us at about 150 testers. And this was a very, very thoughtful, vetted process to get people who not only understood the content that they were looking at, but that were passionate about it. They really wanted to look at this and understand it and give feedback because they felt represented. And I think that representation is a big part of what has worked so well within this network testing framework, is that these network testers, they're deployed on a weekly basis. They go in, there's about roughly 45 to more that test on a weekly basis, give feedback to this particular client about their work, about what they see. Are these images and text, are they culturally appropriate? Do they go with the times? And it's very important receptive feedback for the client that brings an exceptional linguistic and style element to this. The testers, the network testers and the client share and collaborate on. On top of that, it's an approach that spans 15 global time zones, which that in itself is such a large undertaking. And we couldn't do it without the idea of network testers being available 24/7 all the time to be able to take on these requests and really provide a meaningful experience for the users of this particular app. Also, they support multiple teams, global engineering, marketing. There's so many different elements that are wrapped into that and so many people that are involved that it just makes this very holistic experience for the users of this. And on top of that, the network testers that get to provide feedback. And per a calculation from our business team, it's actually coming out to an estimated 63% cost savings versus outsourced models, which in that case is also an amazing thing to hear as well. So overall, this is a great concept, a great teaching. And one of the key takeaways that I take from this is that it doesn't have to be the way that we necessarily tackled it, but there are ways out there for all groups to be able to tackle this and find people, procure people that care about content, that want to see content that represents them, and really get to the core understanding of what that looks like from a user experience. Which leads me into my next example, which tackles a very large leading media company that we work with. This effort itself is a fully managed quality assurance experience. So this is end-to-end, working with agile frameworks and making sure that with network testers, there is a 24/7 testing availability there. Testers need to be on call at all times, ready to jump in. Sometimes 2 testers will work in a run, sometimes 60 of them will work in a run. It all depends, and that volume switches, and we need to be able to keep up with that. Network testers help be able to keep up with such large volumes, especially when you're supported across 11 platforms, you're testing across 20 local metro markets, you're testing live events, or something as simple as just working and going outside and walking your dog and seeing if the experience is the same as it would be if you were at home connected to Wi-Fi. There's minutes to hours for testing turnaround, and over 15% issue and release reduction with this amount of testing that we've done, serving across 7 different product teams. It's really a comprehensive initiative that includes functional usability, location, data strategy. It's just an amazing initiative. And to that end, I'd actually like to hear some of Michelle's thoughts on key takeaways of working with this client.
Yeah, I think you laid it out well. I would say a key takeaway for this client is certainly that it really can matter and does matter where you distribute your testers, especially when location-specific content, including advertising, is so critical to the business and revenue drivers. And then, of course, from an economic standpoint, compared to an outsourced model, it can be very difficult, if at all possible, to have testers placed in those very specific locations, in real devices, across a variety of real devices as well, in real environments. But yeah, thank you for that, Zach. Another good example that I wanted to lay out of a client that we work with, leading on network testing, is an extremely high growth company in the e-commerce space. While still private, so a smaller company other than the 2 examples, they have a ton of capital and they continue to expand in pretty amazing ways. It's awesome for us to get to grow alongside them. This company, actually, different than the other 2 examples as well, leans on a co-managed experience with us, leveraging the Testlio platform itself. I know Steve alluded to that too. They use this platform to leverage test cases and run initiation alongside our team in real time to keep up with their velocity demands. Then, of course, needs over the years, we've been working with this company for a while now, their needs have evolved quite a bit, but one thing that has remained important to them from the beginning till now, and you can see on the screen here, is coverage and breadth, both of test cases and real device OS combinations. Quality, of course, is still important, but volume still really, really matters, as well as coverage multiple days per week, midweek, overnight runs even, with really, really tight turnaround times, often like 0 business hours, so from end of their day to their business morning. They actually also take advantage of weekend cycles so that in that case, no development time is lost. You can imagine having over 55 testers across different time zones, even at half capacity, would be extremely costly to this client. And even then with outsourcing models, it would be tough to provide the in-location, real device experiences with such quick turnaround times, and burst into those requests without a larger backup pool of testers able to kind of swarm in. So this company, I definitely think, has since the beginning, as well as now, leaned on our approaches of network testing It's pretty cool also over the years to see how they continue to evolve their needs, and that our network testing approach can serve them.
Thank you, Michelle, and thank you, Zach. Love listening to that. And so you heard Michelle and Zach describe some specific practices of three very different types of companies. A commerce organization that makes its money off of selling things online, a media company who monetizes through advertising, and then a social network who has a variety of sponsored and branded content initiatives that they also monetize. And through this, we hope that you at least gained a bit of an introduction to concepts around network testing. So again, we hold that these are really natural evolutions in many ways of in-house, outsourced, and crowd testing best practices. And through our work, we've learned a lot that by distributing testers, equipping people to work, where is often best for them, and often where work needs to happen. Using real devices, device farms can be awesome for quick, voluminous testing in many cases, be cost efficient, but we find to get best results to really experience what end users are seeing, that lots of real in the wild devices make sense. We talk about burstability and bursting a whole lot. And again, with that, we mean that you can, at short notice, bring lots of testers in to do work in really tight periods of time where speed matters. And I mentioned native apps before. A lot of our clients will release apps into production every 1 or 2 weeks. And often they release on Monday or Tuesday, and they have a candidate package in iOS or Android available on, say, Thursday night. And so companies like Testlio can take that package, run overnight testing, as Michelle covered on the commerce example, have information, impact, issues, recommendations available Friday morning. Engineering teams can do quick work on Friday. Network testers can do additional work over the weekend, and ultimately ensure that when teams are getting ready to release, especially when you can't easily roll back, such as approval through an Apple Store experience, that the app is absolutely awesome. We think collective or collaborative testing is a winning combination. So there's some crowdsourced testing methods that can work really quickly, and yet may have people operating in pure silos, not working together, not helping one another. And we find that when you bring great testers together, people care deeply about QA and about the product experience that they're testing, and you intentionally encourage them to help one another, that the overall result is much, much better. We have a pledge for testers on the Testlio website, which talks about how we pay by the hour intentionally and better than market rates. You can read that on our website. So we really do believe in strong compensation. We believe, as you've heard, that a test management platform that can oversee all critical processes across multiple organizations and different types of roles is critical. And I think you've gained a sense as we talk about our relationships with amazing clients, that partnerships can unlock value for everybody involved. This is something that you can do on your own. So as Zach said, you can recruit testers who care about your product. As Zach and Michelle talked about in the case of the media example, you make sure that your testers are in the right markets when networks or advertising or other things really matter. You can use lots of different device OS combinations, as Michelle concluded with the commerce provider. But it's pretty hard to do. So sometimes partnerships make a whole lot of sense. And with that, we conclude the presentation part of our webinar today. So there's more information available online, inclusive of the 16 attributes of network testing. This does remain a pretty new concept for us. So we just unveiled network testing as a philosophy and an approach in April. We appreciate feedback. I'm available on LinkedIn. Zach and Michelle are pretty easy to find as well too. So anything that you heard today that you'd like to challenge or that you'd like to give us feedback on, we'd really appreciate it as well too. And I wonder, Lindsay, if we've gotten any questions so far today.
We haven't gotten too many, so I'd encourage people to keep shooting anything that you're wondering in the Q&A feature. We do have a couple from Tim. So one is, what is the biggest difference between crowdsourced testing and network testing?
I'm happy to take that one because there are some semantics involved here. So one of our practice leads, John, gave a webinar with Sauce Labs and got kind of a similar question. Question there, I think, was phrased something like, well, if I use crowd testing techniques with professional quality testers, isn't that the same thing as network testing? And I'd argue sort of, yeah, what we see with crowd testing is that there's often a bug bounty model. And so testers are paid only if they discover issues. And that encourages speed. So you want to move fast because you want to be the first one to find the issue. It also encourages noise in the system and also discourages deep dives to discover more critical, hard to find problems. So one difference, often, not all forms of crowd testing, but some forms of crowd testing that use bug bounties, is that network testing intentionally pays for the work itself and rewards the quality process. We very much believe that it's important to go deep and look for critical issues and opportunities for improvements. And in many cases, a very successful test run is that the engineering team feels confident to release. You don't have to find issues in order to have a very successful testing completion process. There are other differences as well, too, around collective approaches. So network testing very much has systems and processes to enable and equip testers to communicate with one another, to really help one another out. And some of the crowdsourced testing approaches really intentionally silo testers. There also are some crowdsourced testing systems that aren't always fully transparent. So in some cases, you may get testing results, but not actually know everything that's happened. And one of the tenets of network testing is that everything's traceable and transparent. Anybody participating, anybody on the engineering team that actually released the product can see exactly what happened. So hopefully, Lindsay, that helped.
Great. We did have a couple more come in. Alexander is wondering about how this would work with regression testing. So is there perhaps an example we have of networked testing and regression testing?
I can take this one. So yeah, honestly, one of the first things that I do want to call out is a lot of this, and especially with the social media example that I use, a lot of this is very procured and very unique. A lot of people run regression in different ways and identify test cases in different ways. So using an applied example that I've done using our network testers that we currently work with is I manage fully and work with internal QA, really define process, and I sit down with each individual stakeholder. I review the test cases that we have in place. We also execute in sprint tickets to be able to identify basis of acceptance criteria for certain test cases. What is the most important to check each time? What is the idea behind a launch checklist versus a post-launch checklist, and what does that look like? So these are all things that we sit down with each stakeholder, identify. We, of course, have our own assessment of how we look at this, and I could write up test cases for days around what I feel is the most important. But this is also a piece to alluding to what Steve was talking about around collaboration. We collaborate to make sure that every single detail is finite and that every regression is found per release. And that's what these network testers are here for. We're able to identify device OS combinations that are needed per run. If you had a crash on a Samsung S9 running 7.0, we're going to make sure to continue to loop that regression in there. If your data was lost for a certain page call, we're going to make sure that that page call is checked each and individual time. So it's a very much a collaborative experience to identify what's most important and then execute and improve and learn off of that. I hope that answers the question. And then if Michelle, Steve, if you guys have anything to add there, please do.
Just a small add is why it's also very different than crowdsourced, which I know wasn't explicitly stated in the question, but while we have these testers and they are paid per hour, so something that Steve highlighted in the previous example, is that we do value their time. So it's not just about swarming in and a bug bounty. So majority of our clients, if not 100% of them, are going through some form of regression testing or at least a set of test cases. And so that's what's great about the networked model is they're vetted, they're pre-approved, and they are familiar with the product and the process as well as with the companies that they're working for. And so they're thoroughly going through all those pieces to make sure they're covering everything that they want them to do, in addition to some exploratory testing as well.
Awesome. I'm going to keep shooting them at you guys. Alexis is wondering, how can your product work alongside small in-house QA teams?
Maybe I'll start. I kind of like this, where each of us weigh in a little bit. We love emerging companies. I've been a part of lots of startups. Testlio, we still consider ourselves very much an early stage and emerging hyper-growth company. And we love in-house QA teams. And so there's a co-managed approach that we've designed where in-house quality experts can take certain responsibilities, such as defining tests, coordinating runs, putting tests together into executable plans, and can work using platforms like Testlio to communicate and work directly with testers. And oftentimes this extends the capacity of the in-house team. So we do see some companies who are embracing automated testing, starting with unit tests, taking internal quality folks and really encouraging them to do quality engineering work closely with engineering, in which case then network testing can be another layer of extended manual testing. And then in some cases where it makes sense for in-house testers to do regular, say, code check-in reviews, we can extend out and complement around major moments. So for agile teams that are doing 2-week major epics, for example, they want to do extensive testing every 2 weeks. In-house can be working closely with product and engineering, and then you can take a network testing approach and run it over the course of the weekend. I was describing sort of the Thursday through Monday methodology before. And so you can get a lot of testing done. We think of this sometimes in like the crevices of engineering and product work cycles too. So Michelle and Zach can say more, but I'd say, a large percentage of our clients have in-house QA who we complement. And then, there's certainly some clients who have no internal quality team and who turn to companies like Testlio. Do you want to add, Michelle, anything? And then maybe Zach as well?
Yeah, I think you kind of laid on the last point, but just to make sure it's clear, I know a lot of testing vendors come in and they intend to replace. It's certainly not our intention. Some of my favorite, in fact, all of my favorite client relationships, well, I won't say all because they're all very good, but are the ones that we're partnering with a QA team internally or a quality team. There's a couple of reasons why. One, you have like a true partner in it. We're really there to support them. I often say, when you have a bad day, we have a bad day with you. Like, we're with you in it. We really intend to be. But the other thing too is that you can see from the organization perspective that they invest in quality, and then they see where we're going with it. We can strategize alongside them, and so it just creates a really solid partnership in that regard. I think to Steve's point, there's a lot that our network of testers, we talk about in location, in real environments. That means sitting in a living room testing, talking about streaming into a connected TV device. There's just certain things you can't replicate in-house, and so we certainly come in and expect to supplement or complement what you're doing internally, not intending to replace. But we have some clients that come to us and they don't want to build that in-house, and we absolutely can come in and serve those clients as well.
Yeah, and to kind of double on that point, Michelle touched on something that's very close to my heart, which is partnering with certain groups that may not have QA in-house. So I've partnered with large QA teams, no QA teams, small QA teams. And I think the idea across all of it, and I'm probably saying this in every single comment that I'm making at this point, but a lot of it is collaboration and partnership. And I think it's filling in the gaps, really understanding, I've had just the random gambit of like, here's some iOS devices we wanted you to run on, to the internal team is really struggling to get something on a device that you have to search through eBay and all of these other things to try to get and try to supplement. And we can do that. We can partner in that sense and really continue to strive and provide confidence on that level through extended partnership.
Great. Carlos is wondering, what is the main strength of networked testing compared to other kinds of testing? So maybe Steve, you want to start with that one again too.
Well, Carlos wants one. Carlos, the 16 attributes that we have on our website, I can't just steer you to that. The main strength of network testing is what we think of as quality. So it is really, we find, the best way to ensure that your product is thoroughly, completely tested in as many permutations and locations and on devices as possible. We think it's the best way to discover issues and also to find improvements. So, Crystal, who's smiling at us right now, our co-founder and now our chief testing officer, she worked for a major crowd testing company before. And she found that their bug bounty model and their over-reliance on speed caused her work and others' work to actually lose sight of quality. And at the end of the day, like, we love quality. We're a quality company. And so we believe that, all things aside and considered, that network testing has taken best practices from lots of places and is truly the best way to get a quality experience in your product. Michelle, Zach, do you want to add anything? I guess there's only one answer, right? So do you agree?
I mean, to just lay into, we really value quality over quantity. I think that's a big thing of it. And it's examples of those have been said, so sorry to be repetitive, but it's the quality of testers. We vet them thoroughly, so not just anyone in our network or anyone that signs up for our network is a part of it. And then the hourly, paid by the hour, really does just shift the quality of work that we're providing. So I had a client once and it really made sense and struck home, but with our model, he said that if you guys test all of the test cases I ask for across all of devices and you find 0 bugs, that's a win for me. At the end of the day, we do measure quality in a lot of ways by number of bugs, but we're also gearing up towards a release. So the goal is to get that number down before we go out. And so I think that it's a combination of those things. Plus, because of that network group of testers, we talked about a pool of testers. Not sure if it was explicitly clear, but we dedicate or assign that, like, a specific pool of testers to each of our client projects. Every time they go into a cycle or a run, we don't open it up to the entire network. We have dedicated or assigned a specific, like handpicked, to be honest, pool of testers for each of those clients. And so that's the other difference as well. And Zach, I'm sure, has plenty to add.
Yeah, I mean, working in quality assurance now for over 10 years and working for a lot of the companies that I have worked for, I've worked with a lot of vendors, a lot of different groups. And one of the biggest, I think anybody who works in QA, leads QA, directs QA, the biggest thing is quality, right? Like, you're sitting there to yourself and you're just like, does this actually look good? Like, is this actually functioning correctly? And that kind of mentality sticks with you. So when you start reviewing these type of things, that's what it always comes back to. Like, regardless of what happens, it's always going to bubble up back to quality. And personally, I've seen some great things produced by network testers that we've worked with, things that they've actually put out there, the amount of feedback, the amount of care. These are the kind of things that really bubble up to a great quality experience across the board. Agility and all of that leads into that one bullet. So yes, Steve, I do agree. There really is only one answer to this, and that is quality.
Yeah, thank you, Carlos. Lindsay, do we want to make sure that folks know at 3 minutes after, I think you said this up front, right? But like, the official part of this is over and we're hanging out now. This is like after the conference and the coffee shop or the patio now, appropriately distanced. But like, folks should feel free to stay with us or head out if they'd like. That's right, Lindsay, but we'll keep taking questions for maybe another 10 minutes or so if they're still there.
Yeah, I think we got one more. So maybe I'll just put out also kind of a last call if anyone has any other questions. But we have one more question coming from the chat. And that has to do with, are there options for clients to take on testing management or run tests through your testing platform?
Michelle and Zach are looking at me, so I'll go first. Sorry if it's weird that I keep going first, but oh well, I'm going to go first again. So the way that we have constructed a network testing offering with Testlio, and again, there's lots of approaches out there towards testing, and these questions are feeling generous because I think some of them have been about how Testlio works, and we've been trying to also offer best practices and takeaways and things that you can do independent of Testlio. But given that this question, I think, was around our platform, I'll answer it that way. So we've designed a three-part offering with a client services team, with engagement managers and test leads, principals like Zach, who really partner with our clients, a distributed global network. So we have over 10,000 professional, fully vetted, amazing testers in 156 countries around the world, and then a software platform. And you could, as a client of ours, come into our software platform and really manage much of the testing process itself, but we have not decoupled the platform from our network of testers. So we hold that our approach with a test management software platform and with a network of testers really is a critical, at least two-part system with at least, usually some best practices, coaching, and guidance. There are other pure test management software systems that are out there, but with Testlio, we do require that you use at least some of our network, of your own employees test as well too, in order to unlock the full potential of our testing. Do you want to add anything? I may have gotten that one, Zach.
Yeah, I think you did. I think it was just kind of bringing the point home that a lot of it is still tied into our network. So, of course, if you wanted to join us in that capacity around actually managing your own efforts, we'll always be there to guide the way and make sure that you have everything and all the resources necessary to be able to do that. And you would have access to a global network of people who can jump in at a moment's notice and have a really good understanding of quality and assurance in quality. God, that was terrible, but you get my point there. But yeah, no, to Steve's point, I think it's it's a great effort, and I think that you always have somebody there to be able to help support you in that case.
Michelle, what about you? Any final words of wisdom?
I think you guys nailed that one. I don't have anything magical to add.
Cool. Well, I think we're done with questions. So Steve, if you want to offer maybe any last notes about how people can follow up with us. And then I just want to say thanks for coming, everyone.
Mainly amplifying Lindsay's gratitude. Thank you so much for joining us today. We tried to pack a lot in. We were asked, can you really do a webinar in 20 minutes with then some time for questions? And we said, yeah, sure, we can. So thanks for sticking with us and going on a journey of network testing. Our website has lots of content, at least 3 layers deep in most sections. So love for you to visit us there. There are all sorts of learn more buttons where you can communicate with us. As mentioned, Zach, Michelle, and I are on LinkedIn also, so please reach out there and do give us some feedback as well too. We'd love to hear if there's anything that we did today that could have been better or clearer for you. And with that, Lindsay, I think we're done for today, aren't we?
Yeah, sounds good. So thanks everyone, and also thanks panelists.